Gazans, that there's some collaboration going on between Israel and these gangs, these well-organized gangs that are now hijacking trucks. What's your understanding of what's going on there?
Well, there's so much to unpack there.
Yeah.
The United Nations lost something like 97 trucks. Mm-hmm. The United Nations, out of a convoy of, I believe, 109.
Yeah.
The United Nations cannot distribute aid in Gaza. There are 900 truckloads worth of aid sitting on the Gazan side of the Kerem Shalom crossing that they simply can't distribute. When the UN is asked by journalists why, what it would take for them to distribute, they say Israeli protection. And when they then say to them, well, why doesn't the Israeli army accompany the convoys? They then say, well, they can't accompany the convoys because that'll make the convoys a target of the other side. There is no force, no criminal gang, no clan, no family. No, these are all these terms used to describe a real social reality on the ground in Gaza. There is no force big enough to take 97 trucks out of the hands of the UN, except Hamas in the certain areas where the Israelis aren't operating. So the very idea that 97 of these trucks are lost, the UN says something about it, doesn't say who it is, doesn't say who it suspects it is, doesn't say if these items have shown up on the black market in Gaza, being sold by certain parties or other parties. It's all very, very strangely vague. And then there's this argument that, in fact, it's not Hamas. It can't be anyone but Hamas. Hamas is still sufficiently strong in Gaza to not allow anyone else to come in. The irony is that a few months back, I think probably 5 months ago, something like that, the Israeli army tried to build out a separate aid distribution system working with these clans, which are just an important social structure in Gazan society that also sometimes built out organized crime syndicates. And the two aid convoys that worked with the Israeli army publicly, this is known, and this is something that nobody has hidden, were intercepted and massacred by Hamas forces. And so Israel hasn't actually trusted the clans to be capable of actually doing the distribution and holding their own in Gaza. There is no one in Gaza who could have taken those trucks except Hamas. Therefore, my conclusion, I have not heard evidence. I've seen a lot of this desperate speculation, hoping to avoid the very idea that Hamas might be the bad guys in any scenario. But I haven't actually seen any evidence that suggests that anyone else even remotely has the capability. And so falling back on these conspiracies of the Israelis would love the aid to get distributed in ways that totally bypass Hamas. It would get a lot of pressure off of them. And nobody quite knows how, because Hamas is sufficiently strong to continue disrupting the aid.
Emily has a question in a second. I'm just curious. Yasser Abu Shabab is the leader of the hijacking group that Hamas claims to have sent its security forces to ambush and attack. He was killed in this attack. What's the theory for why the security forces launched this ambush of these hijackers if the hijackers were actually Hamas?
That there's some chance that they were piecing together some kind of an organization that was capable of working with the Israelis, or that they needed somebody to massacre to make this case. So, and it's more likely. It's more likely than that 97 trucks were taken by those 20 people. It's more likely than that there is a clan nobody's ever heard of before.
You just mentioned something interesting in your answer about how Hamas is still, I think you said, sufficiently strong. And I think that's a really important point. And I want to ask, I probably disagree with the argument, but is that part of, because I think there are some hawkish people who will say, Hamas has been basically vanquished and destroyed. And that seems to me a dishonest argument. There has been a lot of destruction, but Hamas has reconstituted itself in northern Gaza, for example, and is still there. It's still, in dealing with infrastructure and all of those, sort of a vacuum, obviously. So who else would fill it but Hamas? Is this part of your argument as to why the humanitarianism, as you put it, of the Biden administration is insufficient and has been cruel, as you put it earlier, to the people of the Palestinians, the people of Gaza, because it sort of drags the conflict out longer than otherwise it could have been?
Yeah, the best way I think to think about this is to distinguish the Lebanon situation from the Gaza situation. Mm. In Lebanon, Israel's supreme interest is at some point pretty soon to end it. And the reason is that it achieved a tremendous amount in Lebanon in terms of weakening Hezbollah, shattering Hezbollah, and at incredibly low cost. And as it sticks around and as it expands the war and as it maybe goes deeper and as Lebanon itself has no other, Israel will start paying higher cost and for much lower return. And so right now there is a real ceasefire negotiation process that the Israelis are interested in. Hezbollah took such a blow that Hezbollah is interested in. Hezbollah's patrons in Iran feel like they're on their back feet and they're interested in. So there's a real likelihood, and every one of the parties wants it, but they're trying to shape how it looks and how they define the story of it for a ceasefire. The problem that Israel has in Gaza, the security problem Israel has in Gaza, is very, very simple. There is no other rest of Gaza other than Hamas. In other words, in Lebanon, there's a lot of other factions and groups and political organizations and even kind of militias. And there's the Lebanese army, which has refused to engage the Israelis because they know Israel's at war with Hezbollah and not with Lebanon. All of that other rest of the polity that can step in to fill the vacuum doesn't exist in Gaza. There is only Hamas. And Israel adopted a doctrine kind of learned from Afghanistan. The American mistake in Afghanistan, part of the American mistake was something called the clear and hold doctrine, which is that they cleared, a valley, they took the valley, they cleared the valley, and then they held it with a Marine detachment or an Army detachment so that the Taliban couldn't regroup there. What that ended up creating was many, many thousands of targets for the guerrillas all over Afghanistan. It ended up being a major source of pain and a major obstacle to America achieving its goals in Afghanistan. So Israel has the opposite of that in Gaza. Hamas is buried underground in 500 kilometers of tunnels. It spent 17 years building, and it's the single biggest thing Palestinians have ever built. And Hamas bent Gaza's entire economy to building these tunnels. And in 13 months of war, not a single civilian has been documented being allowed into the tunnels for safety. And so Israel's goal is to get Hamas out of those tunnels, to engage them and to destroy them. How do you do that? You take an area with Hamas, and then you pull out, and Hamas comes back, and then you take that area again. And so literally everywhere in Gaza, you've seen 3, 4, 5 Israeli entries, and each time an Israeli pullout to kind of reverse the clear and hold problem. So right now what we're talking about is a Gaza in which Hamas has sections of its organization still underground, sections of its organization that come up and retake control. No one else who can fill that gap. There's no serious organization with guns and popular support of any kind, even in small areas of Gaza, that can fill the gap. There is only Hamas. I haven't described to you the solution. I've just described to you the problem that nobody has a solution for. Not Biden, not the left, not the right, not Netanyahu, not progressives in America. Nobody quite knows what takes over Gaza after Hamas. And let me just say one last sentence about that, because this is fundamental. If Hamas can't be removed from Gaza, nobody knows how to rebuild. Nobody knows how to push the ceasefire forward. You can't dump $100 billion on Gaza and actually have it rebuilt if Hamas is the one passing out the money. So Gaza is a huge problem, and Hamas is the name of that problem. And there's no perfect solution for it. What the Israelis are hoping for is a long degradation war. It's going to be 2 years, 3 years, and eventually Hamas will slowly be degraded enough that other solutions can come to play.
So the United States eventually said, you know what, why don't we just withdraw from Afghanistan? Hamas is saying that if Israel withdraw from Gaza, they will release the hostages. Why not take that deal?
Why not take the deal that you end the war and release the hostages?
Yeah.
Hamas has not ever said that. It said this, by the way, the week after October 7. I mean, it said it immediately. No war. We're fine. We're totally fine. Here's all your hostages back, but totally end to the war. There's simply 2 points. First of all, that's not true. Hamas has always added massive other stipulations having to do with the West Bank, having to do with prisoners, including prisoners who are mass murderers in Israeli prisons and by the thousands. There's never been a Hamas statement that it said, just let's end it. Just let's end the war. Go back to October 6th. Nothing happened.
Well, they've said they would accept the Biden.
Something.
They've said they would accept the framework that was put through by Netanyahu's war cabinet and then announced by Biden in July, right? Didn't they say they would accept that?
It's an interesting thing. First of all, that's a very temporary, tiny little deal that leaves most of the hostages still in Hamas's hands. That's first of all. Second of all, and that they have occasionally leaked to the. Secondly, we don't actually know. We know a lot of things the Qataris said they said. We know a lot of things the Egyptians claimed they might have said at some point, probably. We know all this stuff from sort of unsubstantiated leaks that actual officials won't confirm. There has never been, I'm a huge